A homecoming, Bills Mafia, as the Buffalo Bills are bringing back cornerback Tre'Davious White on a one-year deal. Just a week before the 2025 NFL Draft, with the Bills having a need at outside corner, they decided to bring back an old friend, Tre White, Goalie Academy. Josh Allen's good buddy, Tre White. I'm happy that he's back in Buffalo. Adam Schefter broke the news here late on Thursday evening. He says the Bills and CB Tre White reached agreement today on a one-year deal worth up to $6.8 million. And White now returns to Buffalo, where he played from 2017 to 2023 and was a two-time Pro Bowl selection. Now, this next nugget from Schefter is a little interesting here, as he says that Connor, a.k.a. Tre White's agent, and Bills GM Brandon Beane made progress on a new deal during the league meetings, which was, like 2 weeks ago at this point, and then closed on it today. So this has been something that's been in the works for a little bit now. The Bills trying to bring back Tre White and not really making any moves there on Rasul Douglas, who they lost in free agency this year. He still remains on the open market. But this is why you guys subscribe to the channel. When the Bills make a move, you know we're going to bring you guys content here. We're going to be first on YouTube in the Bills community. So lock us in. Make sure you keep us tapped in as your number one Bills content provider on YouTube. YouTube.com/Bills News. We're only 40 subs away from our next milestone of 3,500 subscribers. So get in early and circle the wagons with us here at the Bills Breakdown. All right, my instant reaction to this, it feels like an overpay. Now, to be fair, the only figure that we see so far is $6.8 million, but we have to keep in mind it is up to $6.8 million. So how much money will he be guaranteed? That number has not come out yet, and we'll let you know when it does. But at the end of the day, can Tre White bring $6.8 million into his contract here? Can he play up to that standard to make all the money that he's owed? We'll dive into the possibilities on that in just a moment. But I wanted to go to this first from Sal Capaccio. You all know Sal from WGR. He says, we will hear from the Bills side next week on Reuniting with Tre White. Brandon Beane speaks on Tuesday, pre the draft, as all GMs in this league have to do. But after the Bills playoff game this season against the Ravens, White told Sal Capaccio that he would love the opportunity to come back to Buffalo if that possibility presented itself. It has, and he did. So he comes back to Buffalo, but it is not the same Tre White that left Buffalo. Let's be quite honest. And honestly, he was coming down the wire of his Bills career, and it was not pretty. And you know why? The injuries, the knee. It doesn't seem like something for a player who is now 30 years old that is going to be getting much better anytime soon. He did play 11 games last year, spent time with the Rams and the Ravens down the stretch of the season. But if you look back to 2023, 2022, and 2021, he only played 21 games in 3 seasons, averaging 7 games a year. That is not a recipe for somebody who you want to be starting a full season at outside corner, because he probably just can't do that anymore. Now, when he did leave Buffalo, went to Los Angeles, it wasn't pretty. To be quite honest, in 4 games started, he allowed 4 touchdowns, allowed a passer rating of 147.8. That is way higher than what Rasul Douglas was allowing last year, and we know that was a bad figure. So nearly 150, that's 5.5 off of the perfect passer rating in the NFL. So that's not all that good. And then he also had 5 penalties in 4 games. Did have a little bit of a semi-resurgence when he ended up getting moved to Baltimore at the trade deadline. And his one flashing game, I don't have all the numbers next to me right now, is splitting as a Raven. But I just want to go through a couple of screen grabs here. When they ended up matching up with the Pittsburgh Steelers, look at Tre White going bar for bar, step for step with George Pickens right there at the pylon, making it happen, getting his hands on the football and breaking that pass up. And he kept doing it throughout the game. Here's another look of Tre White just locking up George Pickens there in the back of the end zone. Here's another look from the back shot. Look of the end zone there. Honestly, I'm not going to sit here and act like Tre White had some career resurgence and came back to prominence, that Pro Bowl level player that he was when he was with Baltimore, but he showed flashes that he can still be out there on the football field, and that's why the Bills signed him and, quite frankly, gave him a good bit of bread. He is 30 years old, though, will be turning 31 in the 2025 season, so at the end of the day, this is not a spring chicken that Buffalo's bringing back here. He didn't go somewhere else to get a bag for a year and now comes back to Buffalo. I mean, he was on his way out with the injuries and then the production level dropping during his last 2 seasons in Buffalo. So he comes back now on a cheapish 1-year deal, a little bit of a prove-it ordeal, and maybe Josh Allen had something to do with this when it's all said and done because we know he and Josh have a great relationship there. But Tre White comes back to Buffalo on a 1-year deal worth up to $6.8 million. We don't know what the guarantee money looks like as of right now, but I can't imagine with the production level that he's had, with the injury history and all the missed games, it's going to be too much in guaranteed money. I'd say probably something $2.5 million or less. But grade the signing of Tre White coming back to Buffalo, back in the 716. Open up that Tre White Goalie Academy once again. Open it and grade it for me. A, B, C, D, or F. The signing of Tre White back to the Buffalo Bills. All right, I'm going to give it a B-. And I'm not saying that Tre White is going to be some ultra producer for Buffalo here, over a 17-game stretch. But I will say that he provides, pretty solid depth at the CB spot and a veteran sense of leadership. Buffalo loses Rasul Douglas this past offseason. Then, they're not willing to bring him back. They didn't like the production that they gave him enough last year to bring him back on a 1-year deal. They seem to like Tre White enough to bring him back after what they saw, I guess, in the playoff game and I guess down the stretch of the season last year where he probably had some better outings than he had when he was a Los Angeles Ram. So I'm giving it a B-. And this does not... for one, this likely means that Rasul Douglas is not coming back. So for anybody who is wishing that number 31 would be back with the Buffalo Bills, it's just not looking likely all at that point, especially with the financial commitment that the Bills made to Tre White. They probably wanted to make something similar to Douglas, and that number probably wasn't what he was looking for. However, what this does not mean for Buffalo, it means that the Bills not drafting a cornerback early, that's not something that's going down now just because they signed Tre White here. I don't think that they signed Tre White to be a starter on this team. You still have Dane Jackson, who's going to be making more money than Tre White in 2025. So this definitely does not erase the need for a cornerback early on in the NFL draft. But what it does provide is some of that veteran mentality, that veteran leadership, and somebody who can help ease a transition from college football to the NFL for one of these young bucks that the Bills could draft early on in 2025. Now, next week when that happens, here's a couple of names that the Bills could have on their radar. Now, to be fair, Jahdae Barron, love him. I would be over the moon if the Bills left the draft with Jahdae Barron, but he's going to be drafted way before pick 30. That Buffalo would have to trade up to go make that happen, as well as Will Johnson, the ball-hawking corner out of Michigan. That he's somebody who a lot of people don't think is going to get past the Miami Dolphins there at 13, and definitely not past the CB needy teams in the middle of the teens. But a couple of guys who could be on the Bills' radar if they do stick and pick at 30 or potentially, down the line at 56 or 62 in the second round. Trey Amos out of the University of Mississippi, Ole Miss fella. I like him a lot, and you might find something out about him in the next couple of seconds. Maxwell Hairston, he is the man-to-man corner who dazzled at the NFL Combine, 4.28, the fastest of any player in 2025. And then Shavon Revel Jr., the absolute athletic freak out of East Carolina who missed a lot of time last season. Remember, tore that ACL. So somebody maybe who could fall to the back half of the second round might be available for Buffalo. He was available in the second round of the 2025 Chat Sports mock draft that we had here, where all these channels went live and made their own picks for the teams they cover. Shavon Revel Jr. was available down there in the back half of round 2, but I could not select him because I went with Trey Amos at 30 overall. I didn't like he was probably my number 1 player on the board. However, there were some other players in different positions that weren't necessarily the highest need for Buffalo, but a guy like Mykel Williams did fall all the way down to the end of round 1. I decided to go Trey Amos, though. I decided to go Trey Amos because I feel like he can be a day 1 starter on the outside for Buffalo. He gets pro comps to Darius Slay, a guy who we know has won Super Bowls and is a player who has a unique ability to get his hands on the football. Trey Amos led the SEC in pass breakups last season, so a player that I'm really high on and hope that Buffalo will go out there and select if he's on the board at 30, given that there aren't any massive slips from a player that's super high up on their board. But get in the comments for me one more time. Who is your guy at the CB spot? I think the Buffalo Bills will be taking a cornerback in their first 3 selections of the 2025 draft, so name a corner that you want to see the Bills draft next Thursday. All right, before we get out of here, I just want to give you guys another little bit of a news nugget for the Bills because I saw this information and I thought it'd be, pertinent to the show as the Bills made a signing, but they also had some releases as well. They released Branson Reed, the D tackle, and Armani Rogers, the tight end, as Armani Rogers tear his ACL in this offseason, so he will not be a part of the Bills next year. But make sure you are subscribed to the Bills Breakdown here at Chat Sports. We're bringing any and all Bills news that we have on tap, so to make sure you're covered, subscribe, turn notifications on. We'll see you guys all in the next one. As always, go Bills.